Hello everyone, welcome back to the cave. It's a delightful day for the child in me because the theme for today's video is Pokemon. Whether it's the shows, the games, or the trading cards, Pokemon has captivated millions with its fantastic assortment of fantasy fauna. Now amongst all the Pokemon, there are a few in every generation that hold an extra special place in trainers' hearts. You guessed it, the starters. The biggest decision any kid can make is picking their very first Pokemon to take on their journey. Let me know in the comments below what your first Pokemon was. For me, you know I had to pick everyone's most beloved blue gangster. No, not Snoop Dogg. I'm talking about
Squirtle!
This little guy stole my heart as a kid and never gave it back. So today I decided I wanted to make a little Squirtle sculpture using polymer clay. I'll start by rolling some clay into a nice little ball. After a quick bake, we can use a pencil to sketch in some guides for the facial features. These don't have to be perfect, just good enough to know where to put the clay. Let's drill a hole in the bottom of the head to add a neck bone. I slid the head into a pin vise to add some extra grip. I'll start out by building up some of the features of the face using little bits of clay. Then I'll blend in the edges using some silicone sculpting tools. You can also use the back of your tools if they're smooth enough. Using the tip of my tool, I added a little emphasis to the smile. Now to avoid any unwanted fingerprints, I'm using a bit of alcohol and a paintbrush to smooth out the surface before baking. While that's in the oven, let's make these adorable little arms. Cut a little log of clay in half to make sure you have the same amount for each arm. Then roll them both out and cut a taper into the ends. Next, I roughly cut out the shape of the hand. Then I used a combination of tools and pinching to shape his little fingies. And that's it for the arms. Now you can give yourself a little high five. Next, get a ball of clay and a ball of aluminum foil and just kind of bang them together until they combine. I used a big old ball stylus to burrow in some head, arm, and leg holes. Once the arms are out of the oven, I push them into the holes just to make sure the socket's a perfect fit. After a quick bake, I sketch some lines onto the shell to act as a guide for adding the scutes. A quick brush to knock off any pencil debris. Now this was my first failed attempt at making this little turtle nugget, but using a bit of poster tack, I'm giving this problem child purpose as a makeshift grip.
Special sauce alert.
This special sauce is mineral oil. It's mostly used for protecting cutting boards and other wooden utensils, but for our purposes, it'll help the unbaked clay adhere and blend into the already baked clay. Next, I cut up some thin strips and applied them to the shell according to the pattern. After a bit of trimming and some blending, the shell's starting to take shape. You can simply repeat this process for the rest of the shell. For the legs, we're basically doing the same process as we did for the arms. A little bit of cutting and pinching to form the toes. The clay near the joints is rather thin, so rather than drilling, I was able to just poke my sculpting tool right in there. Unlike the arms, the legs are bone in to add a little bit more stability to the figure. Next, I shoved the legs on, doing my best to keep them centered. Then I used a bit of bacon bond to secure the legs into the joints. I drilled a couple holes into a piece of wood so we can stand Squirtle up. I did a bit more sculpting on the legs and then moved to the rest of the body. Then I glued both of the arms in. And finally the head. With that done, now it's time to move on to Squirtle's backside. For the back of the shell, I cut a bit of clay until it looked like the boulder badge. Next, I smoothed it out and blended it into the rest of the shell. A quick brush of alcohol to remove any fingerprints. After a quick bake, I sketched on some more guidelines and just repeated the process we used for the front of the shell. For the tail, I started with a sizable log of clay and just rolled it out until I was happy with the shape. Then I curled the end into the iconic swirl of Squirtle's tail. A quick test fit to make sure it's the right size. A bit more bacon bond to glue it on. And then the last part of the sculpture is the little strip that wraps around Squirtle's shell. After a bit of cleanup and a quick bake, this bad boy is ready for priming. These are the paints I'm using for this project. I did my best to match that iconic Squirtle blue. I tried avoiding any brush strokes by using some pretty thinned out paint, but that means that every color took just about 1,000,000 coats. The brown was actually really nice, it only took a few coats to get a solid color. This part was especially nerve-wracking because my hands are about as steady as Brock's love life. Now it's time for the face. I base coated the eyes in white and the mouth in black. Then I used this dark muted pink for the inside of the mouth. Add a lighter pink on top for the tongue. This next part was the most nerve-wracking task of this whole project. I took my time sketching the layout of the eyes, doing my best to make sure they're both symmetrical. With the sketch in place, it's basically just a paint by numbers. Next, I added his nostrils and his little eyebrows. I outlined his eyes off camera because I was a little too scared of messing them up. And with that done, it's time for the Glamour Shots. If you made it this far, consider subscribing. I'd love for you to join our growing community, and there's a lot of cool projects coming down the pipeline. Especially with spooky season around the corner, I can guarantee the next project will be frighteningly adorable. But until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.